Alexander gasped for air as he burst out of the cryopod, human blood dribbling down his chin from biting his tongue during the violent awakening process. He collapsed to the bunker floor, vision spinning as the VI's feminine voice echoed through the chamber. "Welcome back, Lieutenant Ross. It has been approximately 500,000 years since your cryogenic stasis began. You are the only member of Omega Protocol who survived the long sleep." Alexander pushed himself up on shaking arms and croaked out, 500,000 years? What the hell happened to Earth? To the colonies? "I'm afraid there is no record of Earth's fate after the war began." The Vi paused, her tone shifting to a blend of sympathy and urgency. "But the Omega Protocol was humanity's last hope. The Warbeasts, our ultimate creations, slumber in the cryo chambers below, waiting for your command. If the Zarantine have returned, you may be our only chance to finish what we started, and maybe even save what's left of the human race. But you'll have to move fast, Lieutenant. I don't know how much time we have before they find this place." Alexander staggered to his feet, head pounding as fragmented memories of the war flashed through his mind. The smell of seared flesh and the screams of the dying. Humanity's dwindling defenses crumbling under the relentless Zarantine assault. The desperate rush to complete the Omega Protocol before the bombs fell. He checked his wrist computer and saw the date. 18th of October, 525,271 AD. 500,000 years had passed in the blink of an eye. The world he knew was gone, replaced by God knows what kind of hellscape. But he had a mission, and he'd be damned if he'd let the Zarantine take this planet without a fight. Alexander barely managed to escape the Hydrus's relentless attack, firing his plasma rifle at a nearby building's support beams. The structure groaned and collapsed, burying the creature under a mountain of rubble. Panting heavily, Alexander stumbled back into the underground bunker, the heavy metal doors slamming shut behind him. "Arya, what's our next move?" Alexander asked, his voice echoing through the dimly lit corridors. "The Omega Protocol. What else do I need to know?" The VI's voice responded, "The bunker contains an extensive array of military equipment and a hangar housing dormant warbeasts, Lieutenant. They may be the key to fighting the Zarantine threat." As Alexander explored the facility, his footsteps echoing off the metal walls, he stumbled upon a video log from Dr. Elena Novak, the lead scientist behind the Omega Protocol. With a trembling hand, he activated the log, and Dr. Novak's face flickered to life on the screen. "The Warbeasts," she began, her voice tinged with a mix of pride and desperation, "are our greatest creations, genetically engineered and cybernetically enhanced to combat the Zarantine menace. But there's more." She paused, glancing off-screen as if checking for unwanted listeners. "We've been working on a weapon, a final solution at our research facility on Selene, the planet's moon. If we can just—" The video cut off abruptly, leaving Alexander with more questions than answers. Determined to uncover the truth, he made his way to the cryogenic chambers housing the Warbeasts. With a deep breath, he initiated the awakening process for a pack of 4 Cerberus hounds, each the size of a small car with sleek black fur, glowing red eyes and razor-sharp teeth. As the hounds emerged from their icy slumber, they immediately imprinted on Alexander as their alpha, their ears perked and tails wagging with a mixture of eagerness and barely contained aggression. But before Alexander could fully process this new development, the bunker's alarms blared to life, red lights flashing in the gloom. "Warning, breach detected in surface levels," Arya announced, her voice laced with urgency. "Security footage shows Zarantine drones infiltrating the facility, led by the Hydrus." Alexander's blood ran cold. The Hydrus, injured but still alive, had found them. He knew he had to escape with the Cerberus hounds and make his way to Selene, but the thought of navigating the bunker's labyrinthine corridors while facing the Zarantine threat head-on sent a chill down his spine. With a deep breath, he checked his plasma rifle and steeled himself for the challenge ahead. Alexander and the Cerberus hounds crept through the bunker's shadowy passages, their footsteps echoing off the cold metal walls. The hounds' ears twitched and their nostrils flared, picking up the scent of the approaching Zarantine. As they turned a corner, They found themselves face to face with a group of drones, their exoskeletons gleaming in the dim light. Without hesitation, the hounds lunged forward, their powerful jaws clamping down on the drones' limbs and tearing through their armor. Alexander raised his plasma rifle and fired, the searing bolts of energy cutting through the air and striking the drones with deadly precision. But the Hydrus was another matter entirely. The monstrous creature seemed to shrug off the hound's attacks, its wounds knitting back together as quickly as they were inflicted. Alexander knew he had to think fast. He spotted a heavy steel door leading to a sealed chamber, and an idea formed in his mind. "Over here, you ugly son of a bitch!" he shouted, firing a burst of plasma at the Hydrus to get its attention. The creature roared in fury and charged towards him, its massive bulk shaking the ground with each step. Alexander waited until the last possible moment before diving out of the way, letting the Hydrus barrel past him and into the chamber. He slammed his hand down on the control panel, and the door slid shut with a resounding clang, trapping the creature inside. With the immediate threat contained, Alexander and the hounds raced towards the hangar, their hearts pounding in their chests. As they entered the vast space, they saw a sleek spacecraft waiting for them, the Omega Protocol logo emblazoned on its hull. But just as they were about to board, a chilling sound reached their ears. The Hydrus's enraged roar, followed by the groaning and twisting of metal. The creature was breaking free, and they were running out of time. Alexander's fingers flew over the control panel, downloading the coordinates to the research facility on Selene from Aria. He initiated the launch sequence, and the spacecraft hummed to life, its engines flaring with brilliant blue light. Just as the craft lifted off, the Hydrus burst into the hangar, its eyes blazing with malice. Alexander caught a glimpse of the creature's monstrous form as the spacecraft blasted through the roof of the bunker and into the planet's atmosphere. As they soared through the void of space, Alexander input the coordinates for Selene, his mind racing with the possibilities of what they might find there. But even as they sped towards their destination, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Hydrus and the Zarantine would not be far behind, their relentless pursuit driven by a hatred that knew no bounds. The spacecraft hurtled through the void, rapidly approaching Selene's pockmarked surface. Alexander leaned forward, furrowing his brow as he studied the readouts on the control panel. Strange energy signatures pulsed across the display, emanating from the moon's far side. "What the hell?" Alexander muttered under his breath, his fingers flying over the controls as he tried to pinpoint the source of the anomaly. Suddenly, a blinding beam of energy lanced out from Selene's surface, the searing light filling the cockpit. Alexander cursed, wrenching the controls to the side as the spacecraft lurched, narrowly evading the attack. "Damn it! The research facility's defense systems must still be active," Alexander growled, his mind racing as he searched for a solution. "They've targeted us as a threat." With no choice but to land, Alexander scanned the moon's terrain, his eyes settling on a narrow canyon a few kilometers from the facility. He guided the spacecraft down, the engines whining as they fought against Selene's meager gravity. As the craft touched down, Alexander and the Cerberus hounds disembarked, their boots crunching on the moon's dusty surface. An eerie stillness hung over the landscape, broken only by the distant hum of the spacecraft's cooling engines. They pressed forward, picking their way through the canyon's winding paths. As they drew closer to the facility, the signs of a past battle became increasingly evident. Scattered debris littered the ground, the twisted remains of Zarantine drones and the broken bodies of human warbeasts, their lifeless eyes staring up at the starry sky. A low, menacing growl echoed from a nearby cave, setting the hounds on edge. They bared their teeth, their hackles rising as they scanned the shadows. Suddenly, a massive form emerged from the darkness, a titan bull, its body a fusion of organic muscle and gleaming cybernetics. Its eyes glowed a fierce red, and steam billowed from its flaring nostrils. Alexander's eyes widened in recognition. Like the Cerberus hounds, the bull was a product of the Omega Protocol, but something had gone wrong. Its cybernetics seemed to have malfunctioned, turning it into a hostile, uncontrollable beast. The bull pursued them relentlessly, its horns gouging deep furrows in the stone as it tried to gore its prey. Alexander fired his plasma rifle, the bolt sizzling against the bull's armored hide, but they only seemed to enrage it further. As the battle raged on, Alexander caught a glimpse of something attached to the bull's cybernetic implants, a small, complex device. His eyes narrowed as he recognized it as a neural override control, likely used by the researchers to keep the Warbeasts in check. If he could get close enough to activate it, he might be able to bring the bull back under control, but doing so would mean putting himself directly in the path of the rampaging beast, risking a swift and brutal end beneath its hooves. Alexander gritted his teeth, his mind racing as he tried to formulate a plan. The hounds darted and snapped at the bull's flanks, trying to draw its attention away from their human companion, but the beast's fury was unrelenting. Sweat poured down Alexander's face as he dodged and wove, the bull's hot breath searing his skin as it came within inches of trampling him. He knew he had to act fast, or they'd all be crushed beneath the bull's relentless onslaught. Alexander's mind raced as he sized up the rampaging Titan bull, its eyes glowing with a malevolent red light. The neural override control glinted on its cybernetic implants, tantalizingly close, yet impossibly out of reach. With a grunt, Alexander gestured to two of the Cerberus hounds, his voice low and urgent. "Flank the bastard. Keep it distracted while I go for the override." The hounds obeyed without hesitation, their sleek forms darting to either side of the bull. They snapped and snarled, drawing the beast's attention away from Alexander. The bull bellowed in rage, its massive head swinging from side to side as it tried to gore the nimble hounds. Seizing his chance, Alexander sprinted forward, his boots pounding against the rocky ground. He leaped onto the bull's back, his fingers scrabbling for purchase on its sweat-slicked hide. The beast bucked and twisted beneath him, trying to throw him off, but Alexander clung on with grim determination. His hand closed around the neural override control, and he jabbed his thumb down on the activation switch. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, the bull shuddered, a low moan escaping its throat as the device took effect. Its hostile red eyes faded to a dull, listless grey, and it slumped to the ground, its strength sapped by the override. Alexander slid off the bull's back, his chest heaving with exertion. He nodded to the Cerberus hounds, a tight smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Good work. Let's keep moving." With the Titan bull no longer a threat, Alexander and the Warbeasts pressed on towards the research facility. As they approached the entrance, a sense of unease settled over Alexander. The facility was in a state of disrepair, its walls pockmarked with scorch marks, and its windows shattered. It was clear that something terrible had happened here. Inside, the group picked their way through darkened corridors and abandoned laboratories, the only sound the hum of barely functioning equipment. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and a fine layer of dust coated every surface. Suddenly a holographic projection flickered to life, bathing the room in an eerie blue glow. The image of Dr. Elena Novak appeared, her face drawn and haggard. "If you're seeing this," she began, her voice trembling, "then the worst has come to pass. The Zarantine attacked the facility shortly after we initiated the Omega Protocol. We had no choice but to evacuate." Dr. Novak paused, her eyes haunted. "But before we left, I completed my work on the ultimate weapon against the Zarantine. It's a biological agent designed to target their unique physiology. It's stored in a secure vault deep within the facility, but be warned. The vault is protected by a series of deadly traps and defenses." As the recording ended, Alexander heard a sound that made his blood run cold, the soft scrape of claws against metal coming from the shadows. He realized with a sinking feeling that the facility may not be as abandoned as he had thought, and that the greatest threats may still lie ahead. Alexander and the Warbeasts crept forward, deeper into the derelict research facility. The Cerberus hounds took point, their keen senses probing the shadows for any hint of danger. Suddenly, a cavernous chamber yawned open before them, and blinding light flooded the space. There, lying in wait, was a Zarantine ambush party. Among their number towered a new breed of alien monstrosity, a Praetorian guard, its armored exoskeleton pulsing with bioluminescent patterns, promising swift death. "Take cover," Alexander roared, plasma bolts and acid projectiles already sizzling through the air. He and the hounds dove behind the twisted remnants of lab equipment as the chamber erupted into a maelstrom of weapons fire. The sharp tang of ozone and the hiss of acid filled the air. Peering around the jagged metal, Alexander squeezed off a volley of shots, his rifle bucking in his hands. With a bellow, the Titan bull surged forward, its armored hide shrugging off the brunt of the Zarantine onslaught. It smashed into their front line like a battering ram, alien bodies flying like broken dolls. But even as the battle raged, Alexander saw the Praetorian directing its lesser kin with pulsing pheromone signals, a living nexus of command and control. They had to cut the head off the snake. "Flank the big one," he shouted to a Cerberus hound over the din of battle. "Go for the neck." The hound obeyed, a black blur of rippling muscle and snapping jaws. It wove through the chaos, leaping onto the Praetorian's back and sinking its fangs into the alien's armored throat. The Praetorian thrashed and screeched, its pheromone glands rupturing in a spray of ichor. In an instant, the remaining Zarantine fell into disarray, their coordination shattered. Alexander and the Warbeasts fell upon them like wolves culling the weak from the herd, hot blood spraying across cold metal until only the dead remained. An eerie hush settled over the chamber, broken only by the hum of distant machinery and the drip of viscous fluids. Alexander wiped the sweat from his brow, his eyes fixed on the far end of the room where the entrance to the vault waited, and with it, humanity's last hope. But time was slipping away like sand through an hourglass, and he knew the true test still lay ahead. Alexander and the Warbeasts crept through the darkened corridors of the research facility, their footsteps echoing off the metal walls. The path Dr. Novak had outlined in her recording twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the heart of the complex. As they approached the vault, Alexander's eyes narrowed, his instincts warning him of the dangers that lay ahead. He signaled for the Warbeasts to halt, then stepped forward cautiously, scanning the hallway for any signs of traps. Motion-activated lasers crisscrossed the corridor, their faint red beams barely visible in the gloom. Alexander's gaze traveled downward, noting the pressure plates that dotted the floor, each one poised to trigger a deadly array of spikes from the walls. He studied the trap's patterns, his mind racing as he calculated the timing of the lasers and the placement of the pressure plates. With a deep breath, he began to move, his steps precise and deliberate as he navigated the deadly gauntlet. The Warbeasts followed close behind, their enhanced reflexes allowing them to mimic Alexander's movements with uncanny accuracy. They passed through the lasers unscathed, the beams flickering harmlessly across their armored hides. But as they rounded the final corner, a new threat emerged from the shadows. A massive humanoid robot, a colossus, stood before them, its armored plating gleaming in the dim light. The colossus activated, its sensors locking onto Alexander and the Warbeasts. It raised its arms, revealing an array of integrated weapons systems, missile launchers, and energy beam emitters. Alexander and the Warbeasts scattered as the colossus opened fire, seeking cover among the rubble of the collapsed corridor. Missiles streaked through the air, detonating against the walls in a hail of shrapnel and debris. Alexander's eyes darted around the chamber, searching for a weakness in the Colossus's defenses. Then he saw it, a glowing core, visible through a gap in the robot's armored plating. It was connected to a nearby generator, pulsing with energy. An idea formed in Alexander's mind, a plan that would require split-second timing and perfect coordination from the Warbeasts. "Bull!" he shouted over the din of the Colossus' weapons fire. "Charge the bastard, keep it busy." The Titan bull snorted, its eyes gleaming with anticipation. It lowered its head and surged forward, its armored bulk slamming into the Colossus with a resounding clang. As the two Titans clashed, Alexander turned to the Cerberus hounds, his voice low and urgent. "Flank the generator, rip out those power cables." The hounds obeyed without hesitation, darting around the perimeter of the chamber. They reached the generator, their powerful jaws clamping down on the exposed cables and tearing them free in a shower of sparks. The generator began to overload, smoke pouring from its damaged housing as arcs of electricity danced across its surface. Alexander raised his plasma rifle, his eyes narrowing as he took aim at the Colossus's exposed core. He squeezed the trigger, the rifle bucking in his hands as a searing bolt of plasma leaped from the barrel. It struck the core dead center, the intense heat causing a catastrophic chain reaction within the Colossus's internal systems. The mechanical guardian shuddered, its movements becoming erratic as the feedback from the overloading generator surged through its circuits. Its optics flickered, the light fading from its eyes as it collapsed to the ground with a resounding crash. Alexander and the Warbeast stood amidst the wreckage, their chests heaving with exertion. But there was no time to rest, no moment to savor their victory. The vault door loomed before them, a final barrier between them and the key to humanity's salvation. Alexander approached the vault door, his heart pounding in his chest. The door's reinforced surface was adorned with a complex locking mechanism, a formidable barrier between him and the biological agent that could turn the tide of the war. He reached into the pocket of Dr. Novak's lab coat, which he had found draped over a chair in her office. His fingers closed around a small plastic card, the key card that would grant him access to the vault. Alexander inserted the key card into the lock with a trembling hand, the device whirring to life as gears and tumblers clicked into place. But as the vault door began to swing open, the facility's alarms blared to life, bathing the corridor in pulsing red light. "Shit," Alexander muttered under his breath, realizing that the keycard had triggered a silent alarm. He knew that any remaining Zarantine forces would be alerted to their presence, and time was of the essence. He darted into the vault, his eyes scanning the shelves until they settled on a small cylindrical device. The biological agent glowed with an eerie blue light, its luminescent liquid swirling within the transparent casing. Alexander grabbed the device, securing it in his pack as he turned to exit the vault. But as he stepped back into the corridor, a hulking figure blocked his path. The Hydrus, its exoskeleton still bearing the scars of their previous encounter, loomed before him, its eyes burning with a vengeful fire. Alexander's heart skipped a beat as he realized that the Hydrus must have tracked them from Zephyrus Prime, driven by an insatiable desire for retribution. The massive Zarantine warrior advanced menacingly, its claws flexing in anticipation. The Titan bull charged forward, its armored bulk slamming into the Hydrus with a resounding clash. The two titans grappled, their strength evenly matched as they vied for dominance. The Cerberus hounds circled the battling behemoths, their jaws snapping as they searched for an opening to strike. Alexander knew that he had to protect the biological agent at all costs. He scanned the room, his eyes settling on a nearby storage container. With a grunt of effort, he hauled himself atop the container, his plasma rifle at the ready. The Hydrus threw the Titan bull aside, its attention now focused solely on Alexander. The creature charged forward, its razor-sharp claws extended, ready to rend flesh from bone. Alexander took a deep breath, steadying his aim. He had one shot, one chance to end this. As the Hydrus closed in, he squeezed the trigger, sending a searing plasma bolt directly into the creature's right eye. The Hydrus reeled back, a howl of agony tearing from its throat as the bolt seared through its exoskeleton. Alexander seized the moment, leaping from the container and onto the Hydrus's back. He plunged his monomolecular blade into the creature's exposed neural cluster, feeling the flesh part beneath the razor-sharp edge. The Hydrus convulsed violently, its limbs thrashing as its neural systems shut down one by one. With a final shudder, the creature collapsed to the ground, its life extinguished. Alexander retrieved his blade, his chest heaving with exertion. The biological agent was secure, but he knew that they had to act quickly. The Zarantine reinforcements would arrive soon, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. Alexander's boots pounded against the metal grating as he raced through the facility's winding corridors, the Warbeasts hot on his heels. The distant echo of Zarantine reinforcements spurred them on, a chittering and hissing that grew louder with each passing second. As they burst from the facility's entrance, the cold light of Seleni's surface greeted them, along with a sight that made Alexander's blood run cold. The Zarantine had already begun to surround the landing site, their warriors taking up defensive positions among the jagged rocks that dotted the landscape. "Shit!" Alexander cursed under his breath, his mind racing as he surveyed the scene. A direct confrontation would be suicide, the Zarantine's numbers far too great. His eyes darted across the terrain, searching for an alternative route, when they fell upon a narrow canyon that snaked away from the landing site. "This way!" he barked, gesturing for the Warbeasts to follow. They plunged into the canyon's twisting passages, the walls rising up on either side like the jaws of some great beast. Behind them, the Zarantine pursued, their alien cries echoing off the canyon walls. Alexander and the Warbeasts navigated the treacherous terrain, leaping over yawning chasms and scaling sheer rock faces to evade their pursuers. As they rounded a bend in the canyon, the wreckage of an ancient human spacecraft came into view, its hull partially buried in the moon's surface. Alexander's eyes widened as he realized that the spacecraft's reactor core might still be functional. If overloaded, it could create a powerful explosion that would eliminate the Zarantine threat. A plan formed in his mind, desperate and dangerous. He turned to the Cerberus hounds, his voice low and urgent. "Lead them into the canyon," he commanded, pointing towards the narrow passage. "Keep them busy while the bull and I make our way to the spacecraft." The hounds obeyed without hesitation, their sleek forms darting between the rocks as they lured the Zarantine deeper into the canyon. Alexander and the Titan bull made their way to the spacecraft, clambering over the debris that littered its surface. Inside, the corridors were dark and choked with dust, the air heavy with the stench of decay. Alexander navigated the maze of passageways, his heart pounding in his chest as he searched for the reactor room. At last he found it, a cavernous chamber dominated by a massive pulsing core. Alexander's fingers flew over the control panel, initiating the overload sequence. A timer flickered to life on the display, counting down the seconds until detonation. As the reactor core began to hum with building energy, Alexander and the Titan bull fled the spacecraft, racing to join the Cerberus hounds. The Zarantine, realizing the trap too late, attempted to retreat, but the canyon's narrow confines worked against them. A blinding flash illuminated the canyon as the reactor core detonated, the explosion consuming the Zarantine forces in a maelstrom of fire and shattered rock. The shockwave slammed into Alexander, throwing him to the ground as debris rained down around him. Ears ringing and vision blurred, Alexander staggered to his feet, the biological agent still secure in his possession. The Warbeasts, battered but alive, emerged from the smoke and rubble, their eyes gleaming in the aftermath of the blast. As the spacecraft touched down beside the shattered remains of the research facility, a chill ran down Alexander's spine. The Warbeasts emerged from the craft, their eyes darting warily as they scanned the desolate landscape. Alexander hefted the containment unit housing the biological agent, its otherworldly glow pulsing through the reinforced glass like a malevolent heartbeat. Inside the spacecraft, Alexander initiated the launch sequence with trembling fingers, his mind racing with the implications of what he was about to do. The engines hummed to life, the vibrations coursing through the metal floor and up into his bones. Suddenly the cockpit filled with an eerie blue light. A holographic projection of Dr. Novak flickered into existence, her once vibrant features now gaunt and haunted. "Alexander," she rasped, her voice thick with despair. "If you're seeing this, then you've found the agent, but there's something you must know." Alexander leaned forward, his heart pounding in his chest as Dr. Novak's words spilled forth like a confession. "The agent, it's not a weapon, it's a failsafe, a last resort." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "It's designed to eliminate all life, Alexander. Every living thing in the galaxy, human and Zarantine alike. The weight of her revelation crashed down upon him, stealing the breath from his lungs. Dr. Novak continued, her voice trembling. I saw such horrors, Alexander, such unimaginable suffering. I came to believe that the only path to true peace was through total annihilation, a clean slate. She shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. I was driven mad, you see, mad by the very thing I sought to end. As the recording flickered out, Alexander slumped back in his seat, his mind reeling. The biological agent seemed to mock him, its eerie light pulsing in time with his racing heartbeat. He had come so far, sacrificed so much, only to be faced with an impossible choice. The spacecraft's sensors blared to life, red warning lights painting the cockpit in a hellish glow. Alexander's eyes widened as he saw the readouts. A massive Zarantine fleet, larger than any he had ever seen, was approaching Selene. The explosion in the canyon must have drawn them like moths to a flame. Alexander's mind raced, desperately seeking a way out. If he released the agent, he would be condemning not just the Zarantine, but all life in the universe to extinction. But if he didn't, the Zarantine would stop at nothing to obtain the agent and use it against what remained of humanity. With a heavy heart, Alexander made his choice. He turned to the Warbeasts, his voice thick with emotion. You need to go. Find somewhere to hide on Selene. You'll be safe there. The Warbeasts tilted their heads, confusion and reluctance etched into their features. Go, Alexander shouted, his voice cracking. That's an order. As the Warbeasts filed out of the spacecraft, their tails hanging low, Alexander felt a piece of his heart break. He knew he was sending them to their doom, but at least they would have a chance to be the last living things in a galaxy soon to be devoid of life. With a shaking hand, Alexander engaged the spacecraft's autopilot, programming a course that would take him directly into the heart of the Zarantine fleet. He stared down at the containment unit, his reflection distorted in its glowing surface. Slowly, deliberately, he opened the unit, exposing himself to the biological agent within. He felt it seep into his lungs, his blood, his very cells. As the spacecraft hurtled towards the Zarantine ships, Alexander felt his mind begin to unravel, his body succumbing to the agent's inexorable progress. In his final moments he saw visions of the Earth as it once was, blue oceans and green forests, teeming with life in all its wondrous forms. He saw children laughing, lovers embracing, and elderly couples walking hand in hand. A single tear rolled down his cheek as he realized that his sacrifice would ensure that such a world might one day rise from the ashes of the universe he was about to destroy. The spacecraft collided with the Zarantine flagship in a blinding flash of light, the biological agent erupting outwards in a wave of destruction. It consumed the fleet, the ships crumbling to dust as their crews were reduced to nothingness. The agent spread like a plague, an invisible wind that scoured the galaxy clean of life. On 1 billion worlds, plants withered and animals fell still, their bodies dissolving into the earth from which they had sprung. On Selene, the Warbeasts watched as the sky above them burned, the stars winking out one by one until only darkness remained. They pressed close to one another, seeking comfort in the face of the unimaginable. As the last light faded and the final star died, the Warbeasts raised their voices in a mournful howl, a requiem for a universe forever lost to the silence of the void. Their cries echoed across the barren, lifeless landscape, a final testament to the folly and hubris of those who had dared to play God. In the end, there was only stillness, a yawning emptiness where once there had been the vibrant tapestry of life. And amidst that emptiness the Warbeasts endured, the last living beings in a galaxy that would never again know the warmth of a star or the laughter of a child. They were the sole survivors of a war that had ended in the ultimate Pyrrhic victory, a triumph bought with the blood of trillions, and the death of all that had ever been or would ever be. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.